Blistering criticism from around the world is not changing Donald Trump's mind. He insists the government needs to keep Muslims from coming into the country temporarily. In an interview, Trump said Republican opponents are just trying to get publicity for themselves, but it is not just the candidates who are attacking Trump. Vice President Joe Biden says, quote, "I don't know what his motive is, but I know what he's preaching is very, very dangerous brew for America." The Pentagon is also rejecting Trump's proposal.
Anything that tries to bolster, if you will, the ISIL narrative that the United States is somehow at war with Islam is contrary to our values and contrary to our national security.
The United Nations Agency for Refugees is concerned that the rhetoric is putting an incredibly important resettlement program at risk that is meant for the most vulnerable people. Trump's idea met similar opposition all around the world. One British newspaper headline this morning says, "Ban him from Britain." And France's prime minister says Mr. Trump, like others, stokes hatred.
The U.S. Attorney General says this morning that Syed Rizwan Farook and his wife have not been linked to any wider terror cell. But officials now believe both of the San Bernardino shooters pledged their allegiance to ISIS. Sources tell CBS News that Farook obtained a $28,500 loan from an online lender called Prosper. Investigators are now tracking the money. We're also getting our first look inside the room where 14 people were killed. A newly released photo shows a county employee, Julie Swan Paez, getting an award just before the attack. Paez was shot twice in the pelvis, but today she is recovering. And more than a dozen first responders are now sharing their stories.
One of the worst things I ever had experienced in my entire career. It was terrible. And I was hoping to go my whole career without seeing that.
When we began moving forward in order to go on to other portions of the building, I became very fearful that possibly they were in the room and that I just had missed them.
My body went numb. It was overwhelming and surreal. The fact that Detective or Corporal Mike Ernest had said, as we were going in, this is real, it immediately hit home that this is not a training drill. And at that point, we just wanted to stop any threat towards any human life at that point.
Fran Townsend is a former Homeland Security advisor to President George W. Bush. She has been following the latest developments in the San Bernardino investigation. Fran, good morning.
Good morning, Charlie.
So it's great to have you here.
Good to be here.
What do we know about the path to radicalization that these two took?
Well, you know, it's interesting, Charlie. Of course, everybody has their own individual path. If there was one, it would make it much easier for investigators. It looks pretty clearly that the female shooter was radicalized before she arrived in the United States. She spent most of her life in Saudi Arabia. She's associated with during her time in Pakistan with a very radical mosque there and a madrasa. And so she may have very well been radicalized overseas before she ever came here. Investigators are right now very much focused on whether or not she accelerated his path to radicalization when he was here in the United States.
But you know what's so frightening about this? They were on no watch list at all. And the people that worked with them said, we thought they were our friends. We were raising money for their baby shower. We were honoring them. We ate with them every day. We went out with them. And there was no sign that this was brewing. What can we learn from this, Fran?
You know, that's really part of it. People live in our communities, and what you're looking for, what investigators, Director of FBI, Director Comey, has pleaded with the American people to, even if it seems insignificant to you, if you see a change in activity, behavior, to report it. So the male shooter, Syed Farook, he had been a daily mosque attender, and 3 weeks before the shooting, he stopped going. Very odd for a very observant Muslim. And so it's little things. A neighbor had seen lots of activity in and out of the garage, which turns out to have been a pipe bomb factory, but didn't report it because she was afraid that she'd be looked upon as having profiled. And so little pieces of information, any one of which may not be significant, if people really share that with law enforcement, they may be able to spot this radicalization, this path where they're going to go violent.
Their home not only a pipe bomb factory, but they also had more than 4,500 rounds of ammunition, which is not cheap. We're talking about tens and tens of thousands of dollars for a county employee to spend on ammo. Turns out he had this loan that was nearly $30,000. What does that suggest?
Well, for sure, given what his income was, investigators are going to look to trace the money because, of course, tracking the money may in fact help you to figure out whether or not they're connected to others in this country or outside.
You've been traveling overseas to the Middle East. When Trump makes those comments about banning all Muslims, does that help or hurt the fight against ISIS?
It's incredibly dangerous for two national security reasons. One, our greatest counterterrorism allies are actually our Arab partners, the Saudis, the Emiratis, who give us better on-the-ground intelligence about threats coming our way than any other service. The other thing is our diplomats and military get put at risk because they represent the United States in these Arab countries.
And third, it may turn some Muslims who are prepared to give information against us because of that rhetoric.
That's exactly right. Here in this
Here in
country,
the United States,
it's incredibly
who would
important.
see that kind of radicalization taking place in front of their eyes.
That's right, Charlie, and it's very important we not alienate our Muslim friends here in the United States or around the world.
Thanks, Fran.
We need them.
Fran.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Fran.
you.
Thank you for coming.